Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host Keegan. And this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Jeff Patterson, and he is the author of Yielding Healing, the Yielding Warrior, right? Sorry.
Yeah, the Yielding Warrior.
Sorry, for some reason my brain just wanted to play a little bit of a rhyme game on me, I guess. But Jeff, how you been doing today?
I've been doing good. How about yourself?
Doing well. Um, I see you got a lot of degrees behind you, a lot of diplomas. Could you tell me which ones those are, real quick?
Those are from Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Oh, so those aren't just like pieces of paper. Those are showing that you know how to actually like work with your body and stuff, right?
Yeah, something like that.
How long did it take for you to acquire all of those?
I've been practicing the martial arts now for about 36 years, so it's been a lifetime journey.
Oh man, 36 years. That is definitely some dedication, and it's something that I think a lot of people don't realize goes into martial arts. I know a lot of us, myself at least, will go into a movie theater, watch an action movie, and come out thinking I got a black belt all of a sudden. But obviously that's not how it works. But before we dive into a little bit more along those lines, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what makes your meditation style different?
Yeah, so I'm out here in Portland, Oregon, and I've been running a martial arts meditation center here for about a little over 30 years. It's kind of been my life's passion. I had a teacher a long time ago once tell me that you want to create a life and not make a living. And so, I was the
Mm.
first kid in my whole extended family to go through college. And they all thought I was going to go get some big important job working behind a desk somewhere. And I decided to follow my passion and teach the meditative and martial arts. And it's been an amazing career, but it was very challenging in the beginning. And
Mm.
a lot of my family was second guessing, thinking, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to do something with your life? And they never
Yeah.
would have guessed that it would have turned into this in the beginning, but it's been a real fun ride, and I've been able to help thousands of people through the years. Here at my academy alone, I've had over 26,000 students come through the academy, plus the thousands
Ooh.
of students I've been able to help online. And so it's been very
Wow.
rewarding, and through being in front of so many students, I've heard hundreds of stories through the years of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives, and that's what's made me so passionate about doing these podcasts, writing my last few books, creating my online program, my teacher training program. All that stuff has come from that motivation and drive to want to get out there and hear more of those stories.
Oh man, that is awesome. And I'm so glad that you're into meditation and also just willing to help people. Really is what I'm super happy about because we need more people like that in the world, And I can only imagine that it was a bumpy ride getting to where you are today. What were some of the early challenges that you faced with meditation, or trying to bring what you do into light?
In the beginning, I didn't really understand what meditation was for. And, as a very fairly young guy, I was very much into Western boxing. And I
Mm.
used to go to a boxing gym just a few blocks down the street here from my academy in Portland. And at a boxing gym, for those of you that don't know this, they're run a lot different than your traditional style fitness class in that it's not one teacher up in front of a room teaching a group of students. Usually
Mm.
at a boxing gym, there's a handful of coaches running around and they all have a few fighters that they're working with. Well, at
Mm.
this one particular gym, one of the coaches that was there was a very well known coach. He had created uh, champions in both the amateur and the professional arena. And I really wanted to get to spend some time with him, but he had a full card and he wasn't looking to take on any new athletes. And so I'd always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there. I'd work hard and try to show him that I was dedicated and be worth his time to put a little effort into me.
Mm.
And after following him around for about 3 or 4 months, he finally started helping me out and showing me a few things. And it was only
Ah.
about maybe 2 or 3 weeks from working with him when he
Mhm.
said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. And,
Huh.
at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And, I started doing the practice. And as I already mentioned, it changed my life in many ways. And it's made me so passionate with the practice.
Mhm. Okay. So whenever we think of meditation, we think of, well, a lot of people think that it's think of nothing at all. But that's not necessarily true, as there are different types of meditation, correct?
Yeah, so there's many different methods of practice, and I broadly categorize meditation into 5 paths. We have
Okay.
the athletic path, which teaches people how to improve their performance, their timing, their presence, their awareness, all of these mind body coordination things that help with that higher level of performance. And there's thousands of professional athletes these days using the meditative arts to help improve their performance. Then
Hmm.
there's the therapeutic path, which is good for longevity and keeping our body mobile and working through injuries. There's the medical side of the practice, which is very deep, and all of Chinese medicine comes from Qigong theory, which has been around for thousands of years. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's the philosophical side of the practice, which has always been a passion of mine. It helps open up your perspective and see things from different angles, allows you to be more strategic. And then
Mm-hmm.
lastly, there's the spiritual side of the practice, which I think is what most people think of when they hear the word meditation. But when you
Mm.
understand that there's these different directions you can take the practice, now how do we differentiate those, or how do we put things together? Well, we do that with 3 different pillars of practice through ritual
Okay.
practices, active practices, and philosophical practices.
Okay.
Ritual practices are when you set time aside every day and you focus on maybe a Tai Chi form or a sitting meditation or standing meditation, something where we turn our focus inward and not think about outside distractions.
Mm-hmm.
Then active practices are things that we can do throughout the day to help keep us focused and in that mindset. Meditative arts are meant to be a way of life, not a hobby that we do once in a while. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of crazy to think that you could meditate for 20 minutes a day and feel at peace, but the whole rest of the day you're stressed out and distracted. That's not
Mm-hmm.
really what meditation was meant for. It's meant to help find that balance in life. And
Mm-hmm.
then the third pillar is the philosophical side. And these practices can be used both in the active practices as well as the ritual practice. And when you start incorporating different methods in these 3 pillars, we
Uh-huh.
can start following whatever path we want with our meditation journey.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's really interesting. I didn't know that it was able to be categorized into five branches and three pillars. So it sounds like we can take those and do a combination of a whole bunch of things and get different results. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a preferred method that you like to start with? For someone getting into meditation that doesn't really know, that someone just wants to get their feet wet with it, what would you suggest for them?
Well, the first thing, anytime somebody new comes to a practice,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they've tried meditation before and it just didn't resonate with them, they didn't make it a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is very has always been a challenge for me as a teacher for over 30 years, is that my biggest job is teaching people the importance of integrating this stuff into your life so you can really reap the benefits from it. And it's a huge challenge because you have to build the value in somebody and give them the
Mm-hmm.
discipline and the desire and the will and the consistency to want to do this practice so they can really reap all the benefits. And so I've come up with 3 considerations that I have people spend some time thinking about anytime they're starting their journey in the practice. And I find that if they put some heartfelt thought into these three areas,
Mhm.
that often they'll have a lot more success with their practice.
Oh,
And the first
okay.
one is, why are you being drawn to this practice? What's your interest in wanting to take on the meditative arts? Are you
Mhm.
looking to stay healthier into your later years so you can watch your grandkids grow up or maybe walk your dog? Or are you looking to deal with stress disorders like maybe you have anxiety or panic attacks? Or
Mhm.
maybe you're an athlete and you want to improve your performance? Whatever
Yeah.
that is for you. And then once you have that idea, think about what 10 or 20 things are that will positively change in your life if you
Hmm.
accomplish this goal. Then
Okay.
flip the coin and think about 10 or 20 things that will negatively change in your life if you don't accomplish that. And what this does is it gives us the fuel to get through those down times and those times when, we're feeling like maybe not meditating or we're feeling like not doing our practice or staying consistent. Because we all face this, the alarm's going to go off tomorrow and it's going to be time to get up and train and you're like, I'll hit the snooze button. I'll do it tomorrow. But if
Mhm.
you really have that change and that shift in your mindset to where you look at this as something you get to do because you're
Mhm.
excited about all the benefits you get to the practice rather
Mhm.
than thinking about it as a chore, you're a lot more likely to stay consistent and be motivated to continue with it. And
Mm.
then consistency is the next important thing to think about.
Mhm.
And, there's this ancient Chinese story that I like that really illustrates this idea. And it's about this old stonecutter who was very well known in China and so well known that, people from all across the country knew of his work. And
Mhm.
other people would come to travel from all around to study with him and live with him for years at a time to pick up on the trade.
Oh wow.
Well, every day the stonecutter, he used to go down to the river first thing in the morning and meditate.
Mhm.
And one day after his meditation session, he was walking along the river and he had this profound vision of this big 6 foot tall mystical Chinese dragon made out of jade. And he was
Mm.
so taken by the vision that he decided this was going to be his next project. So, and as you
Uh.
can imagine, trying to find a rock of this size was no easy feat. So he spent the next few months traveling all over China looking for this rock. And
Mhm.
once he found it, he brought it back to his place. And for a few days, he just studied the rock and felt the energy of the rock and tried to envision how this dragon would appear when he
Mhm.
finishes his sculpture.
Okay.
Finally, when he started working on the sculpture, he carefully placed his chisel in one specific place on the backside of the rock and started tapping with his hammer. Hundreds, if not thousands of times a day, and nothing seemed to change. A few
Mhm.
days went by, still nothing. A few more days went by, and some of his apprentices started second guessing what he was doing and wondering if he was on the right path, because nothing was changing.
Mhm.
A few more days went by, and thousands more taps to the hammer and the chisel, and finally, he hit the rock, and this big section broke off the back and created
Mhm.
this smooth line that was slightly curved that was soon going to be part of the dragon's back.
Mhm.
And his apprentice said, "How did you know that that strike was going to break the rock?" And the stonecutter said, "It wasn't that strike that broke the rock. It was the
Mm.
thousands of strikes before it that broke the rock." And
Mhm.
with a little bit of a discouraged look on his face, the apprentice said, "But I've been watching you, and there was no signs of any change. There was no cracks in the rock. How did you know to keep tapping? Why didn't you try something else?"
Mhm.
And the stonecutter got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he
Mhm.
said, "Every strike was not wasted. The stone was changing beneath the surface, and often we can't see these changes with the naked eye. And
Mhm.
through consistency and repetition, not only did the stone change, but so did the one who wields the hammer." And I
Ooh.
love this story in that it's so closely connected to the meditative arts, in that we're practicing this breath work and these sitting meditations, these movement practices, these philosophical concepts that often we don't see the change day to day, but we're
Mhm.
laying the groundwork and the foundation to bear these fruits later in life. And so having this idea of consistency and understanding the importance and the discipline and the perseverance and the integrity to continue this practice, we start seeing these benefits feed over into everything we do in life.
Mm.
Then the third thing to consider
Mm-hmm.
is you need to find a guide. You need to have somebody to help you navigate the waters because the meditative arts is complex. I've been studying for 36 years and I'm still just a student learning all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a million videos out there on YouTube, and if you think you're going to be self-taught and navigate the waters and try to figure out how to do this practice on your own, you're going
Mm-hmm.
to waste a lot of time and a lot of energy and never get past the surface. Having somebody in your corner that can help point you in the right direction and help you down the right path can
Mm-hmm.
save you a lot of time and get you to where you start seeing the benefits of the practice rather than just trying to figure everything out. And so, if you spend some time really understanding what that why is, the importance of consistency and how that affects you, and then having somebody to help guide you down the path,
Mm-hmm.
you can be successful with this practice and see a lot of change from it.
Oh wow. Those are some really strong points, and I love that story with the stonecutter, and it highlights so many things. Like you were saying, that a lot of the changes happen on the inside and stuff. But thank you for that breakdown of what it really takes for someone to get into meditation, because, like you said earlier, it's not just something that you go, "Oh, I'm gonna do it for a little bit," and then just break off, and then maybe come back to it in a few months. It's a lifestyle. It's something that one should do fairly often, if not every day, right?
Every
And
day, yeah. I have a morning ritual that I do, and I haven't missed a day in 5 years since I had my hip surgery 5 years ago. So it's
oh
just kind of
man.
part of who I am. And when you live
Hmm.
that lifestyle, that's where you
Hmm.
really start seeing all the benefits of the practice.
Because those are the moments where you have the chisel and the hammer, and you're just making those small little hits.
Yep.
So whenever it comes to consistency, that can be really difficult for a lot of us nowadays in today's world where it's go, 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 and maybe do something for a little bit here and maybe not finish half of the things we ever do. Did you have an issue with consistency whenever you first started meditating?
You know, I had a little bit of an ulterior motive in that my boxing coach told me that I should do this. And I wanted, everything he told me, I treated like it was
Oh.
gold, and I really wanted to impress him. And so
Mm-hmm.
the last thing I wanted to have happen was to go to the gym one day and have him ask me if I did my meditation practice and have to tell him no. So I did it every day like I was brushing my teeth, and that kind of helped me get through those beginning stages of that distraction and not really understanding what I was doing, because once I realized how beneficial this practice was, I was hooked. And I didn't,
Mm.
I kind of basically found my own whip. I didn't need somebody to hold my hand and tell me to do my practice anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you got the habit built into you without even really trying to do it. Uh, so I think that that's really awesome. And whenever you're talking about these pillars and having a guide, uh, I'm assuming your guide is the one that taught you these branches and pillars and all that.
Well, I've spent the last 36 years of my life since I started doing meditation, traveling around the
Mm.
world. I've studied with many teachers from all over. And so I've had many guides along the way. And, it's just been my life's journey to improve. And once I started not only noticing the changes in myself, but seeing how it positively influenced all of my students that were coming in,
Mm.
I've been on this journey to become the best teacher I can because I want to be able to deliver this information to people and help as many people as I can with it.
That's awesome. And that is something that the world needs. And it takes a spark, a little bit of a spark that some people don't necessarily know that they have. And I think everyone actually has it, but they don't necessarily know how to find it. And I think meditation is a great way to find that spark. So meditation can be used for, uh, oh, I don't know, you. said it earlier, so many different things, right? And with that, what are some of the things that you see people use meditation for the most?
Well, it's used a lot in many areas in life. I already mentioned athletics and how professional athletes are turning to the practice to help improve their performance. Professionals,
Mm-hmm.
CEOs, entrepreneurs use it to help deal with more stress because they've got so much stuff on their plate, and having that ability to be settled and balanced is key.
Mm-hmm.
Creators and artists use it to find that deeper level of creativity and connect with their true spirit and really be in
Mm-hmm.
tune with that. So it enhances that. People who have stress disorders turn to it to help with dealing with anxiety and panic attacks, or people who are sick turn to it for illness prevention. I mean, there's so many different ways that you could use the meditative arts.
Okay. Um, and you have a warrior meditation, correct?
My website is called The Yielding Warrior,
The
and
yielding warrior.
it's named after one of my books that I wrote, The Yielding Warrior. And
Mm-hmm.
yielding. The reason why I use that is it's been a long time concept that I've studied in both the meditative and the martial arts, and it's something I've always been passionate about. And you know, yielding is, I break it down into three pillars in my book, where we have physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding.
Mm-hmm.
Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage
Mm-hmm.
eventually is going to push the other person over. But
Mm-hmm.
with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now
Mm-hmm.
I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you.
Mm.
Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to
Mm-hmm.
be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The
Mm-hmm.
body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. And
Mm-hmm.
while it may take a lifetime to really master these skills, from day one, you can start recognizing these things in yourself. And having this ability, it's obvious how this is beneficial to an athlete, because there's many times where you're going to come up against opponents who are bigger, stronger, and faster than you. And
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to yield helps you deal with that force and that power.
Mm.
Now, once you have that internal awareness in yourself, you also start to see that more clearly in other people. And this is where it becomes very interesting, because now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. And
Mm-hmm.
say, for example, you and I are having a conversation, and I
Uh.
say something that unsettles you, and I
Mm-hmm.
pick up on it right from that first sign of imbalance. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot easier at that point to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place than if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not paying attention to that, and pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is
Mm-hmm.
extremely powerful. One, we're being more considerate, which is something we could all do more of. And
Mm-hmm.
two, it allows us to be strategic so we can guide conversations to a
Mm-hmm.
positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is beneficial in our relationships, in business, and sales, and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different ways we can apply this idea of mental yielding.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third area of yielding is emotional yielding. And this is very much like mental yielding, but with
Mm-hmm.
our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about, oftentimes things will happen to us and we'll respond, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
go down this path, and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, if we could have taken a step back and been more observant, not let our emotions get involved, a lot of times it can save us a lot of heartache on the other side when we make a different decision. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years. I've been running my academy for over 30 years here. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I do yielding all the time. Well, I, I would agree in that I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time, whether they
Mm-hmm.
recognize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And
Mm-hmm.
the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe most people will go through life and never have any clue of unless they have this kind of a practice in their life.
Hmm. Okay. Um, quick question. For some people, they might think that yielding equals surrender, and that's not necessarily true. And so, what would you have to say to someone that would be like, no, yielding means that I'm going to surrender? Because, again, nowadays, everyone is so ready to get up and go and just fight at the drop of a hat, you know? And so, if I'm not ready to respond or react, then that means that I already lost, right? So, a lot of people say that they're going to retaliate as soon as something happens. But to take that moment to step back, some people would say that that is a moment of weakness, that that is surrender, because you're letting something else take the control. But you're saying it's not quite right, correct?
Yes, not at all. And anytime somebody thinks that, it's just because they don't truly understand the concept.
Mm-hmm.
So, yielding is used in military battles, it's used in fighting, and it doesn't get more aggressive than that, you know. And so, the idea of yielding is being aware of the scenario and the situation and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to guide it to the direction that you want it to go with the
Mm-hmm.
least amount of resistance. So, for example, if I come up against some guy who's 250 pounds and can pick up a Volkswagen Bug, if he's mad at me and he's coming at me with a straight line attack,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to butt heads with him and be successful. You know, I'm going to get
Mm-hmm.
smashed. But if
Uh-huh.
I can learn how to yield to that force and then maybe go around and choke him out, I can survive that encounter. Now, I yielded
Mm-hmm.
to his force, but was I
Mm-hmm.
weak in that scenario or was I giving up? Not
No.
at all.
Uh-uh.
And so it's understanding that. And not only does it happen physically, but it's
Mm-hmm.
used mentally, it's used strategically, it's used emotionally. There's many different ways that we can apply this idea of yielding in every area of life.
Okay. And isn't yielding, or really isn't applying these aspects of meditation difficult to do? Because it sounds like I have to be pretty mindful about what I'm doing in my day-to-day actions, and that can be pretty tiring, right?
Well, yeah, you know, yes, meditation is a very deep topic, and there's many different philosophical concepts that you'll spend a lifetime contemplating and trying
Hmm.
to see at different levels. Now, one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, I don't have time to meditate. I'm too tired. I'm so busy. I've got all these things. They'll come up with 1,000 excuses.
Hmm.
And what I've found through teaching thousands of students, I've heard every excuse in the book. And
Oh.
um, the people that feel like they don't have enough time or enough energy to meditate,
Hmm.
when they start meditating and they do it with discipline and consistency, what often happens, more often than not, is that they stimulate more energy, they're more
Mm.
focused. So even though they're setting time aside every day to meditate, because they're more focused and more balanced, they're
Hmm.
able to be more productive and get more done because they're not distracted and trying to think of three different things all the time. And
Hmm.
so while yes, it does take time and energy to do the practice,
Hmm.
that's why, high level executives who have more on their plate than most of us do, they turn to this practice so they can deal with those high level pressures. They can understand that stress and that ability to get more done in a smaller amount of time. And that comes with the ability to focus and not be so distracted.
Hmm. Man, there's a lot to meditation, but I have to ask one thing about meditation. How long do you meditate for every day?
I have a morning ritual that I do that's about an hour and a half that I do every day. And then I
Oh man.
integrate practices throughout the day in active practices, which can be done in as little as a couple minutes. But
Mhm.
oftentimes I'll have an afternoon session that might be 20 or 30 minutes, or an evening session that might be 20 or 30 minutes as well. And it's just kind of part of my lifestyle. And then I'm also teaching it too. So when I'm teaching it, I'm immersed in it in that time as well. So it's, something that I'm into all day, every day, pretty much. However, for students, I tell them if they could just do a 20-minute ritual every day
Mhm.
and then integrate some active practices into their day that can be done when they're walking down the street or standing in line at the grocery store, and do that consistently, that's
Mhm.
enough to really see a lot of the benefits from the practice.
Okay. And you just said active though. I thought you had to do meditation with your eyes closed.
Again, there's many methods of meditations, right?
Mhm.
So some sitting practices we'll do with our eyes closed, some we'll do with
Mhm.
our eyes open, some movement practices we'll do with our eyes closed, and some we'll do with our eyes open.
Mhm.
There's no rule that says this one thing is the only way, the right way. When you're doing a Tai Chi form, for example, which is a movement practice, we have
Mhm.
the eyes open, we're visualizing the sense of enemy in the movement and feeling that energy and expansion, and learning how to create power in six directions from every square inch of the body, and make
Mhm.
that connection from the toes to the fingertips, so we have that energetic flow moving through the body. I mean, there's so many different things that are above and beyond, closing your eyes and counting your breaths, which is what a lot of people associate meditation with.
Mhm. And it's so good that we have people out there letting other people know what meditation is all about. And I ask some of these questions just because some people, again, may be checking into meditation for the first time on this episode, and I just want to make sure that they're kind of hooked and go, ooh, but if I wanted to meditate, if I wanted to get a hold of Jeff Patterson, how do I get a hold of Jeff Patterson? Because he sounds like he's a knowledgeable guy. Because you got a, if people wanted to go to your website, it's the Yielding Warrior, correct?
Yeah, theyieldingwarrior.com. And then
Okay.
also on that website, if you're interested in checking out a free copy of my latest book, you could go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book and just pay for shipping and handling. We'll send you out a
Oh.
copy of the book. On the website is our membership program that teaches you how to build an evolving life practice with the meditative arts, as well as our teacher training program to help show you how to integrate that into an existing business or create a business with it.
Oh wow, that would be awesome. Uh, how many people have actually started coming to do meditation? Well, have you been doing this business during COVID?
Yeah, so I've had my school for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when COVID first shut everything down,
Mm.
I had to pivot, and that's when I created my online program, and that's when I
Ah.
wrote my last book, The Yielding Warrior,
Mm-hmm.
and then when the academy was only shut down for about 3 months, and
Ooh.
then when it came back in, we got that back up and running. But then at that point, I had my online program, and it was really almost a blessing in disguise in that now I have this platform to help
Mm-hmm.
so many more people. Here at my academy, like I said, over 30 years, we've had 26,000 people come through. But on my
Mm-hmm.
online program, I can do 26,000 people in a year.
Yeah.
And so it's a another way where I can really help a lot more people. And so it's been pretty fun kind of putting it all together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Uh, what's been your favorite aspect with running it though? Because doing it and running it, sometimes it makes you not like doing what you were doing, right? So, Matt, uh, yeah, what's the favorite? What keeps you going with it? Watching people get that spark?
One is hearing all the stories of the people that are doing it and seeing their transformation.
Mm-hmm.
The other is I love to create new ideas. And so, like, right now I'm
Ooh.
working on my next book.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I sit down to write, I get excited about it. I'm thinking about how can I make this the best possible piece of literature to help somebody down this path for this. And so it makes me kind of just be present and kind of stay connected to who I am, and it's kind of fun to to do that, you know.
Yeah. Um, and personal question, whenever you were dealing with meditation early on, did you notice that your mental health got better as you were starting to do it? Because you were already boxing, so you had that physical aspect going into play, which physical activity helps mental health. But then meditation is supposed to help mental health as well. So did you notice something along those lines for you early on?
Yeah, so meditation really helped me look at myself and see,
Mm-hmm.
as a young guy, I had a little bit of anger, a little bit of distraction in me, and where, I was gotten a little bit of trouble, and I was off center a little bit, and I knew this as a young guy, and that's why at 17 I joined the Marine Corps because I was like, I need some discipline in my life. I need something that's going to help focus me, and while that kind of helped get me on a more of a disciplined path, it didn't really settle things much for me, and once I started doing meditation, my whole life kind of started shifting, and I started being more connected with who I was in my heart rather than
Mm-hmm.
who I thought I needed to be out in the world. And so it really helped me be
Mm.
more centered and more settled to, I guess, just be more content.
Ooh, be more content, be more authentic with yourself, it sounds like.
Yes.
Um, and I guess that's one of the goals that people go for on meditation is to be content because for maybe 20 minutes, they don't have to worry about anything, right?
You know, a lot of times in today's fast paced society, it's so common for people to walk around in life with these masks on and these barriers up and not letting
Mm-hmm.
people really see who they are or what they're feeling or how they think. They don't want to respond a certain way, and they're putting up all of these things to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Well, meditation is one of those things that helps us see past those barriers. Oftentimes we get
Mm.
so caught up in that we start looking at ourselves in the mirror and we're still wearing these masks. But
Mm-hmm.
when we start a meditation journey, it helps us really find who we are in our soul and be more authentic, be more true to ourselves. And so it's been really valuable in that way. And then also seeing all those transformations in my students as well.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine watching 26,000 people get a little spark in their eye and find a little bit more of themselves has got to be something. Uh, and finding a little bit about who you are with meditation, some people might be uncomfortable with what they find, right? So, how would someone go about dealing with that uncomfortable aspect?
We all have things that we aren't proud of. We all have
Mm-hmm.
things that um, distract us and take us off center.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can stay present, and one, I feel like you have to deal with those things. You have to see them for what they are. But
Mm-hmm.
when you can bring yourself back to the present and not let yourself get distracted, we can be in that place where we can find that love, that balance, that piece of awareness that helps us not go down those negative paths, and one of the things I'll often hear people say is, I tried meditation, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. Well, somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be successful with meditation, that you have to reach this state of nirvana where nothing bothers you. And,
Mm-hmm.
it couldn't be further from the truth. I've spent the majority of my adult life traveling around the world, training with some amazing meditation practitioners, and I have
Mm-hmm.
never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. Everybody does, and it's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
However, through meditation, whether we're doing a movement practice or a sitting practice, and we say we sit for 20 minutes, if you get distracted 50 times during that session,
Mhm.
every time you get distracted, you recognize the imbalance. You use your posture, your movement, or your breath to find that center again. Now
Mhm.
you just got 50 repetitions of being off center and coming back to balance. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you start
Mhm.
to develop this power and this ability to find that balance in everything we do in life. And so now, if you have a distracting day at work or you're upset about something, it's
Mhm.
easy to not get too far down that path and help bring yourself back to center because you have these tools and this consistent repetition on this practice to
Mhm.
help come back to that present moment and find balance.
Oh man, you made me really think of something of coming back to center. It's almost like a rubber band, that's being stretched too much. Coming back to center in meditation is like relaxing that rubber band. And it's almost also like a muscle. The more you do it, the easier it gets. I never really thought about that repetition aspect until you had mentioned it, and it just all of a sudden just like, oh yeah, duh, because you do it a whole bunch.
Yeah.
uh, but it's great that our brains can do this for us, but our bodies have to work with us too. Some of us aren't able to sit still for long periods of time, but like you said, there's different ways for meditation. So someone can do a walking meditation, correct? So that they can actually have a tangible experience, I guess, right?
Yeah, there's many different movement practices for meditation, and different philosophical practices that you can do where you're using your mind to think about different things, or you could work
Mm-hmm.
with mantras to help turn you, to train your mind to not get so distracted. A lot of people in the beginning will have that problem where it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult for them to sit somewhere and just be quiet for 20 minutes. So many times using some of these other methods is very helpful to help them see that center a little bit, and then we can integrate some of those more still practices later on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, whenever it comes to being centered, how would you describe centered? Because everyone always knows centered. Yeah, we hear get centered, you have to be centered, and this, that, or the other. But if you had to describe centered, what would it be?
It's balance, really.
Mm hmm.
It's the idea that I'm not too far into. You go back to your rubber band idea.
Mm hmm.
If you stretch out the rubber band, it gets really tight. But if
Mm
you
hmm.
just let it go, it kind of collapses and goes limp.
Mm
We
hmm.
want to find that balance in the middle
Mm
that helps give it a little bit of aliveness and let the
hmm.
energy come around while at the same time not getting tight. Now,
Mm
oftentimes people will, when their spirit gets elevated, their
hmm. Uh
body gets tight and they get stiff.
huh.
With meditation, it teaches you how to sync the energy in the body and stay relaxed,
Mm
and at
hmm.
the same time elevate that spirit so we're heightened awareness. And when you can be in that heightened state of awareness and at the same time be relaxed and let the energy in the body be rooted,
Mm hmm.
that's one of the ultimate goals for performance.
Okay. It sounds like that's a very powerful feeling to carry around. So it sounds like a superpower. Am I right?
Yeah, sometimes it feels that way. Yeah.
Okay. And it's one that anyone can learn. So it's just a matter of consistency, putting your mind to it, and what other key things go into meditation for you?
So, you know, because meditation is so complex, I will
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes let or teach people the idea of what I call the five regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And they're basically five underlying principles that any meditation practice uses, whether it's Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga or sitting meditation, standing meditation, whatever it is, they
Mm-hmm.
all cultivate these five ideas. And
Okay.
the first one is regulating the body. Then we have regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and then regulating the spirit. And
Okay.
briefly, I'll kind of touch on what I mean when I say these five regulations.
Okay.
So regulating the body is the idea of maintaining our skeletal alignment and being able to be aware of our muscular tension and relaxation in the body. And this
Mhm.
is something that you can train somebody to do fairly fast and see a lot of immediate results from. And
Huh.
an example of this would be, think about a time maybe when you're sitting down at your computer, you've been there 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward and you're feeling lethargic and maybe your neck's getting a little bit sore. And then
Mhm.
another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world.
Mhm.
Well, these two different energetic states we're in control of all day, every day, but it's
Hmm.
how are we choosing to present ourselves to the world?
Uh-huh.
And on a little bit of a deeper level of regulating the body, it involves maintaining some kind of muscular structure in the body, some bit of flexibility, maintaining a healthy diet so we're getting the appropriate amount of nutrients in, and then
Mhm.
getting enough sleep so we have that energy throughout the day. And all of these things are part of regulating the body, which is the first pillar.
Mhm.
Then we have regulating the breath. And the
Okay.
breath is an extremely deep topic. And in fact, Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies.
Hmm.
And because there's so many, we broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang
Mhm.
methods. And yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations,
Mhm.
involve bringing that energy inward. And an example of this would be if you ever listen to somebody sleep, their
Mhm.
natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a
Mhm.
shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing the conscious mind into the subconscious mind, which is
Huh.
where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And
Mhm.
so, if we want to emulate this style of energetic expression in our meditations, we
Mhm.
can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales to bring that energy inward, which is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, dealing with panic attacks. It's good for boosting our creativity. I mean, there's
Mhm.
many reasons why we would do this yin side of the breath.
Okay.
Then we have the yang side of the breath. And the yang side of the breath is more aggressive. It's kind of like if you ever had to push your car or you pick up something heavy. It
Mhm.
involves exhaling, putting tension in the breath, maybe even making the breath audible. And
Mhm.
once we learn how to use this breath strategically, we can use it to control our physiology, our mental well being, and our emotional states. And so the
Mhm.
breath is a really important part of the practice. The third practice is regulating the mind. And we already
Mhm.
kind of touched on this a little bit when we talked about getting distracted in meditation and bringing ourselves back to center.
Mhm.
There's this story I enjoy about these two old monks, and
Mhm.
they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm. They come up to this big mud puddle, and on the
Mhm.
other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, but she's
Mhm.
crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And
Mhm.
she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the
Mhm.
older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, and sets her down, and she's off on her way.
Mhm.
Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road, and finally the younger monk is just furious and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "You're still thinking about that girl? I left her back there at the puddle. Why are you still carrying her?" And how
Ah.
many times in life do we have to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize that we need to let that thing go? And so,
Mm.
regulating the mind is a very important part of our meditation journey. And
Mhm.
then the fourth pillar
Mhm.
is regulating the energy. And this is a topic that we could literally talk for hours about, but a brief idea is
Mhm.
once we've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, we now have the tools to regulate the energy in the body and lead it inward, extend it outward, or circulate it in the body. And then
Mhm.
lastly, the fifth regulation is regulating the spirit. And
Uh,
this is a very profound idea, and it's the idea that, a lot of meditation practitioners will spend their entire life's journey
mhm.
working towards that ultimate stage of enlightenment. But when you understand these five underlying principles, you can see that our meditation journey can affect anything we do in life.
Wow, that is deep. And I loved that story with the monks because how you're so correct. How many times do we have to go down the road before we realize why am I still carrying this? Um, and meditation teaches us how to come back to center really quick. But all of that just goes to show that there's so much into meditation. Um, and do have to ask real quick because you said we can talk about so much on meditation. Could I ask you if we could see you on the show at some point in the future?
Of course, yeah.
Awesome. And with that, uh, meditation and you said those diplomas are for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Yes.
So the two go hand in hand, right? Just because you have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yes, I was just going to say, yeah, there's many similarities. So a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
concepts and the benefits from a meditation practice help us perform better in the physical arts, whether it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or basketball or football or whatever it is. We
Mm-hmm.
learn how to develop that sensitivity and that awareness and that ability to be still and present and come back to center and find that deeper level of focus, which affects everything we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Uh, real quick, there was also a weird little brain moment I had because we have the Karate Kid movies, right? And we have all these kung fu movies where meditation and stuff go hand in hand. So nowadays, do you think that there could be another sports film uh, where it's not karate, but they're incorporating meditation and mindfulness and all of that into the actual film?
I don't see why not, sure.
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely. It's now out in the universe. It shall now happen at some point. um, and I do have a question about difficulty meditating. Whenever someone comes across something in their meditation, and we kind of talked about it earlier, it's something that they don't like. But if it's something that they can't seem to get around, that's what a guide is for, correct?
Yeah, so having a teacher, like I said, is essential for getting to deep levels of practice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, oftentimes when there's something that they have trouble letting go, it's because they haven't explored it, and
Mm.
oftentimes, you need to face that demon and spend some time with it, maybe have a cup of tea with it, and really come to grasps of what that really is, because it's it's hard to just sweep things under the carpet and forget
Mm-hmm.
about them.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come to understand them, and by studying the meditative arts, and especially in the philosophical side of the practice, we learn how to open up our vision and see
Mm-hmm.
things from multiple different angles. So if we
Mm-hmm.
have something in our past that we're having a hard time letting go of, this practice helps us open up that vision and see that thing
Mm-hmm.
from multiple different angles and understand it from different directions, so it
Mm.
becomes easier to let go of. And it might mean that you need to spend time having a cup of tea with that thing for the next 3 months. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how long that's going to be for you,
Uh-huh.
but it will help if you do this practice. And I've seen it with people that have come to my academy who were suicidal, and they've had so many
Mm.
things going on in their mind, and this practice helped turn their life around and make them positive again. And like I said, I've heard hundreds of stories. This practice will help,
Mm-hmm.
but you need somebody in your corner, and you need to be consistent. You need to have a strong why. And if you do that, you'll see success with it.
Okay. A strong why. That I think that is beautiful to bring it all back to the beginning. Why do you want to get into meditation? Why do you want to tackle this particular subject, you know, and I myself have a lot of those questions. And I mean, I've done meditation, but by no means has it been a lifestyle. It has definitely been hobbies that I've done throughout the years, but by no means to your level. And it's something that I aspire to get to one day, but uh, with the level of meditation that is, I don't think my body can do the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu anymore. But let's see. Um, we've got your website. We've got your books. What other shout outs do you have for those in your life that you owe a thanks for?
To all my family, my friends, my teachers through the years, they've been very generous, and without them, I wouldn't have anything that I do. So I'm always grateful for that, and that's something that uh, I think it's good for everybody to spend some time being grateful to all of the great things that we have. A lot of people get so negative and caught up with all of the problems, but man, if you're living in the modern world, you are lucky on many levels. And even if it's something as simple as having clean water to turn on to brush your teeth in the morning, there's many reasons to be grateful.
Mm,
And you need to revisit those as much as you can, because having that solid state of mind and that's something to keep you positive is very important.
yeah. Okay. Um, man, I had one last question. Oh, that's what it was. Do you know a number for someone that is in a crisis, for someone that might be facing suicidal ideations?
No, I don't.
That number is 988. So, for the audience out there, if we can teach our children how to dial 911, we can teach our friends and loved ones how to dial 988 in a crisis. Um, so, that's just my little shout out to those that are facing something that need a little bit of a hotline, because you never know. Sometimes a little voice on the other end of the phone can be angel, right?
For sure. And
um,
and thank you too for all those people that are working those lines, because that's
mm,
a very respectable position, and they work really hard and deal with a lot of negativity, and they're
mhm.
very special people that do that.
Yes, a big thank you to them. Oh, and a big thank you to you as well for your service in our military. That is a big one. I wanted to say that right away, but I didn't want to interrupt you either. um, but whenever, 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 whenever meditation comes to the forefront of your mind, what is something that you can do in a jiffy to get you back to center real quick?
There's many things.
Hmm.
One thing is just recognizing the imbalance, which is the first thing, because
Hmm.
oftentimes when an imbalance comes our way, this negative thought leads to the next negative thought to the next negative thought, and pretty soon we're 10 minutes, an hour down that road.
Hmm.
Whereas if you can recognize that first sign of falling off center, it's a
Hmm.
lot easier to come back to center. And we do that by adjusting our posture, adjusting our breath, adjusting our mental thoughts, adjusting our energetic state, and adjusting our spirit, which is the five regulations, which I touched on earlier. So all
Hmm.
of those things will help with that.
Okay. Oh, that's something to keep in mind, and I actually think that that's really smart, because if I don't know that there's an imbalance, I can't do anything about it, right? But we are near the end of this episode. So, with that, do you have anything you'd like to leave the audience at this moment?
No, nothing other than just remember to come back to, if you're thinking about coming into a practice like this, find a strong why, understand the importance of consistency, and not every day is going to be like you're smelling roses, but stay true to the practice and you'll really get a lot of benefits from it. And find somebody to help you. And if you do that, it'll be one of the best things you've ever done for yourself.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, thank you very much for everything, and I cannot wait to have you back on the show so that we can dive into some rabbit holes about meditation a little bit more than just the almost surface level stuff that we did. Um, but until then, people can find you at the yieldingwarrior.com. And uh, yeah. So until then, everyone, this has been Jeff Patterson on Retrieving Sanity, and we can catch him in the near future. So be sure to check out retrievingsanity.com. Check out the Facebook for updates. And until then, we'll see y'all next week. Thank you for listening on WDJY 99.1 FM. Shalon. Um, sorry. Nope. I had a rabbit, and he went way fast. um, but do you have any last words for anything?
No, good to go.
Alrighty. Um, and let's see. I can send you the Calendly link